Hello, everybody, and welcome to BsquaredC, a podcast celebrating the stories of women of color in the corporate world. I hope everybody is safe and sane wherever you're listening to this from. I am your host, Nancy, and today I want to introduce you to this project and why I am so passionate about it. So what is BsquaredC to start with? Well, BsquaredC is a multimedia storytelling brand for, with, and about women of color in the corporate world. And I'm one of those women, a black woman who is badass and is chasing her dreams in the corporate world. Hence the name BsquaredC, black, badass, and corporate. Well, I'm doing a lot of different things with this brand, which include writing, speaking engagements, as well as career coaching. But we're here to talk about the podcast. So let's get into it. So my story starts in Zimbabwe, where I was born and raised. If you don't know what that is, Google the Victoria Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the world. That's where it is. Small country, south of Africa, and sitting right above South Africa, the country actually. Well, I was this kid growing up with very big dreams and ideas about the world and who I wanted to be in it. And my very first dream, for instance, was to win a Nobel Prize for finding the cure for AIDS. I think I really felt the weight of expectations, especially as a girl, of where I was supposed to go. And listen, I am the baby of 5 children in my family, and my siblings right now are all married with kids and everything. And the script was already laid out for me. I was supposed to go to school, maybe go to college, meet a guy, marry him, have kids. And if any Africans are listening to this, you know the drill. Well, clearly I lost the plot to that story because even as I was little, I was showing signs of it with my intellectual debates with my grandma, where one time she exclaimed that I was going to be sent back. Meaning when I get married, my husband's family would be like, she has a mouth on her, send her back. We did not sign up for this. Like I was some sort of defective product, which is something that does happen sometimes in my culture. But that's a story for another day. I would definitely be telling you some more stories that have defined my path on this podcast, including the influence of my grandma. But that little girl who argued with grandma has evolved into this woman whose ambition is to sit at the most powerful tables in the corporate world to determine the fate of business. In particular, healthcare, which is what I'm really passionate about. However, my road to these tables is long and has already been tedious, even as I'm still so young in my career, barely 4 years out of my MBA. Why is that, you may ask? Well, women of color are already a rare sight in the corporate world, and even more so in leadership positions. Let me throw you some statistics. In 2019, which is just last year, McKinsey and Lean did a study that found that women of color held only 4% of C-suite positions in corporate America. 4%. This is falling far below white men who were 68% and white women who were 19% of these proportions. And it's not like we don't want corporate success. In a study by Catalyst in 2018, an organization that I absolutely love and admire for their work on gender equity in the workplace, 87% of particularly Black women wanted to remain in the same organizations they were and be an influential leader. See, there's a well-recognized phenomenon of the glass ceiling for women, and there's a lot of discussion and action around it, especially in, more recent years. But there's not enough discussion about the intersectional aspect of this phenomenon, specifically with race. Because the things that affect the success of women of color are very different than what affects everybody else, albeit other women as well. There are a few issues that I want to discuss on this podcast with some of my guests, including microaggressions, double standards, unconscious bias, mentorship and sponsorship or the lack thereof, amongst many other issues. And these are all very well documented in research, by the way. Let me tell you a little story that illustrates some of these concepts. Well, a few years ago in an interview, I was asked what was my dream job? Why did I see myself long term? So, without missing a beat, I said, well, I want to be the first Black female CEO of the company I was interviewing for. I said this comment with a chuckle, but then moved on to kind of explain, how I'm thinking about my path in a way. I didn't get this job, but what surprised me was the feedback that I got from the recruiter, where she cited exactly this answer that I gave, saying that this answer made the team feel like I was unrealistic about my goals. Unrealistic. Yo, I remember feeling very confused about this feedback. There's feedback that you can take and do something with. And then there is feedback like this, which is just, I don't know, it was out of my realm of understanding of what to do about it. I told my truth, right? But I think most of all, I wondered whether me, a Black woman, being a CEO or this CEO of this company was completely unfathomable, unimaginable for my whole interview panel, which was all non-people of color, maybe 2/3 white men. And I also wondered that if I looked like them, would they have given me this same feedback? Would I be so unrealistic then? Look, there's a lot to unpack in the story, but it illustrates some of the mental gymnastics that women of color go through time and again when we're in the corporate world about our talent, its worth, and whether the people around us are looking at us as future leaders at this point in my career, because I'm so young in it right now. But how does that work? Especially when you don't have people who look like you, who have set a sort of a blueprint for you to follow to get to the places you want to go to. So that's what I want to do on this podcast. I want to unpack stories like this, and I want to interview women of color who are navigating their corporate careers, learn about their ambitions and how they got to where they are, the challenges that they're facing, and how they are tackling some of them. And I want to celebrate their presence, because just existing at all, wherever we're sitting, is already changing the face of leadership in the corporate world. And in telling these stories, I hope to achieve several things. First off, being as we are often very few of us in our organizations, I want us to see each other across the globe, wherever we're sitting, to know that you're not alone, and whatever you're going through, you have somewhere, you have community to be in. Secondly, I want this to actually be a community where people find fellowship and mentorship and learn best practices of how to accomplish what they want to do and conquer the challenges that they're facing right now. And in doing this, we are empowering each other to go out there and shake up those boardrooms and redefine what leadership looks like. And lastly, of course, this is for the upcoming generations of women of color. I hope that if you're sitting in college right now, if you are, even the little girls who are anywhere around the world dreaming dreams that look like what we are doing right now, to know that if we're doing it, you can do it too. And when it's your time to get here, I hope that we would have done considerable work to smooth out the path for you, so you can get here and we can pull you up and have you at the table as well in a much more easier way, maybe. So let's see. had two very interesting interactions with non-people of color who are really good friends of mine when I was sharing this project and what I'm doing with it. One said that if I wanted to get bigger and have a bigger audience and listenership, I should perhaps open it up to all women. I resolutely told her no. This is not my intention. This space and platform is for women of color, and I'm going to protect it for our stories and our experiences, which are very different than anybody else's because the intersection of race and gender is a very specific crossroad and informs how we interact with the world around us. Another one asked me if this podcast was activist. Well, yes, absolutely. This podcast is activist. It's activist because hearing the stories of women of color is so rare that this platform is a revolution by itself. But most of all, centering and celebrating women of color, it's something that doesn't happen nearly enough. And I'm here to hype up all my girls. I see you, I believe in you, and we got this. So I look forward to sharing my journey and some great stories from my experiences and those of my guests on this podcast. How will it work? Well, mark your calendars because every week on Thursday, I will release a podcast episode. One will be a long form interview with a badass woman of color. Another one will be maybe shorter and a reflection session on the themes that came out from the past week. And I will share some of my stories of how I am navigating those themes as well. So I hope you're ready for this. I'm super pumped to start this journey. For now, subscribe to this podcast. Check out my show notes for my social media handles. I'm on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And I would love to hear from you guys on those platforms and share this podcast and the whole platform with all of your friends. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Nancy, and be safe. Let's get this party started.